Hello! Okay, so hopefully by now you have all gone and read the water rights primer and you know a little bit about IDWR, because if you haven't done that, a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this very informal discussion on water districts will not make any sense. So make sure that you have done that section of the module before you watch the rest of this video. Otherwise, you're wasting your own time. Water districts are kind of an interesting entity or interesting entities. They fall under the direction or umbrella of the Idaho Department of Water Resources, and they have a very specific charge in that they are directed to kind of control the distribution of water from natural water sources, into things like canals, ditches, pumps, and other conveyance systems to get it to the end user, which in all cases would be a water right holder. And it's important to understand that these districts must deliver based on prior appropriation, meaning first in time, first in right. So that means that the senior water right holder has the first right to his water. And unless his right is satisfied, all other users must turn off their water or will not get any delivery. So that is the job of the water district, and specifically the water master of a water district, to ensure that that happens, and also to record the delivery of water. So you can see how this directly relates to our class and our discussion here on delivery systems, because the execution of prior appropriation in the state of Idaho kind of falls at their feet. And in the past, these water districts were primarily associated with surface water sources, things like rivers, streams, creeks, and springs. So you would have an elected water master who is elected by the water users on a particular set of stream, or on a particular stream or river and so forth, who would then carry out the prior appropriation and make sure that the senior water holders were satisfied before the junior right holders. And that continues to this day. However, in the not so distant past, that has been expanded to groundwater. So now we're talking about groundwater districts, which operate in a very similar manner, though there's still a lot of, I think, complications in the way that that is executed. So that's something to kind of scratch your head on as we go through this. So what I wanted to show you is a little bit of useful information of how you can learn more about water districts, or water districts that you might be required to work with. IDWR houses kind of all the information from the water districts. They collect this every year. It is a statutory requirement to do so, and water districts in general have done a very good job of supplying that information to the department. So there's a lot of good info on here. Probably the best place to start, and this is new to me, over here is the mapping section. So this is another, it looks like ESRI, yeah, it is ESRI online map, which shows the various water districts around the state of Idaho. And you can see in our south central Idaho, we have several active water districts who are in charge of distributing water. So you can zoom in on this. Let's see if I'm going the right way. No, that's just changing colors. Now I've selected the whole thing. Okay, let's push it in a little bit deeper. There's Twin Falls, and you can see we have different regulatory basins. This is Basin 47, 45, and 43. These typically follow natural basins or water catchments. Okay, so here you can see a water district which extends this way. And if I click on it, I can see that that is 47O. That is the Rock Creek Water District. So Rock Creek has a water district with a water master who is in charge of delivering water. Okay, so we can look over here. Often we can have overlap. This one right here is a groundwater district. This is Water District 140. This is the Oakley Valley area. Groundwater district that's been around for a little while. And here's another small one here. This is Golden Valley. This is probably one of the earliest kind of groundwater districts I think that was ever in the state. So that's 45. So you can kind of see how you can determine which water district might be associated with a water user or a particular stretch of river or stream or a groundwater area. So this mapping tool is quite useful. I haven't used it a whole lot, but it does seem to be something which is quite handy. So a map is always a good place to start. So there's some good information on here as far as each water district and what the information they provide. You can go to a document search and you can type in the district number. So I'll use 45O, which was the Golden Valley Water District, and I can type in a year. I can also do a blanket search, and I can search, and here is the information from 2012. There's a budget, there are resolutions. These are all typical things associated with a water district, and these things are all voted on by all the water users who are present at the water district meeting, which is held annually. So that's another kind of statutory requirement. So we can look at some of this information here. Here's the affidavit of the water master, and you can note who the water master is here and where he was located at the time. And this particular water district was actually a pretty small one. You can see there were only 3 users, but there is a record of how much water was delivered to each user. So user number 1, which was Tugaw Ranch, received 1,663 acre-feet of water in 2012, whereas Patco LLP received only 811. And of course, if we look these particular water rights up through our water rights research, we can find that this user is the senior right holder, and he also has the lion's share of the water in that particular district. And you also see that that particular user, based on his usage, also pays more into the water district funds. So the water master typically gets some compensation. Some of these have secretaries and things like that. There's some expenses that are associated with managing that water. So each water district is kind of in charge of handling those as they see fit. I did see somewhere in here that there might have been some new rules or statutes promulgated to maybe address compensation. That might have been under the water master section on here. Yeah, there is a new Attorney General's opinion. I guess it's not really any new rules that might be interesting to read if that's something that you're looking at getting into. Anyway, these are forms that the water master uses, things like budgets and services. He has to take an oath. And remember that although he is elected by the water district, by the water users in there, he is at the direction of the director of the Idaho Department of Water Resources. So for many years I acted as the liaison between the department and the water districts. It was quite an interesting job, and it was quite rewarding. But I learned a few things about how water gets delivered in various parts of south central Idaho. Let's see, other interesting things to note on here. There's an overview which talks about what the purpose of the water district is. There's also some things about meeting schedules. These are two useful, I guess one useful document, which I think we'll have time to get to later, not in this module, which talks about canals and laterals. There's some interesting information on there as far as like people's rights when it comes to canals and laterals. let's see, other interesting things on here. Oh yeah, the Water Master section on here can be quite useful. And there's a Water Master's Handbook. This is a useful tool if you're trying to understand kind of why the Water Master does what he does. This is about, it's a 100-page document, so obviously I'm not going to expect you to read it. And it does go into a fair amount of detail about water measurement, a lot of which you would go into if you are in the water measurement class, things like weirs and flumes, mag meters, discharge on sprinklers, things like that, and then also kind of the operation, day-to-day operation of what a water master is supposed to do. So that is an interesting resource. It's available freely through the department. So that's something else you can look at. The other thing that I wanted to show you was, let's see, here is the list of active districts. Somewhere on here there is kind of a more concise see. Oh, here's the water district's description. So under the overview section there is a description of each water district. So if you're just curious, Magic Valley falls in the southern region, and you can't sort this unfortunately, but you can look for key water districts in your area. I really think that mapping tool is a little bit more handy, but this does provide a more exhaustive and more definitive description of where each water district is. So the reason I went through this is because the delivery of the water falls kind of at the feet of the water district and the water master. So the water master is elected for 1 year, and he's elected by the water users, and his charge is to make sure the prior appropriation is executed. And you can imagine his job is not always easy, because if the water drops off, and let's say we're on a river, but if the water drops off and the senior water right holder is not able to satisfy what he has the right to, then all other users have to turn off until he is satisfied. So you can imagine it's not an easy job, though I think the people of Idaho have gotten really good at understanding this law, and by and large I think they're very compliant with it and very do a good job at understanding why we have to manage water this way. So that's one management style. And it's the water districts, I think, are kind of an interesting entity within the state of Idaho, especially as it applies to water delivery systems. Okay, so that's kind of my informal discussion on water districts, kind of what they are, how they operate, and what their purpose is. So if you have questions, this may have been a bit confusing, but please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. And thanks for watching.